Hi, my name is Angel Lauver. I'm the Southeast Regional Director on the North American Executive Board, and I will be presenting on building a community of activists. So the first thing that I think is really important when you're doing activism is to be really passionate about what you're doing. So the passion that really gets the momentum going when you're doing activism events and building this community starts with you. So if you're really passionate and you care a lot about these ideas, other people will see that and they'll say, hey, this person cares so much about this. Maybe I should pay more attention to it. And then they'll be attracted to doing activism with you, hanging out with you, going to your meetings. And it's also a great way to find other passionate leaders. So there might be a hot topic that isn't necessarily just liberty related or something that's going on right now. And someone else could be really passionate about that, and you could connect and team up on working with something on campus or something in the community. So if you're really passionate, other people will find that, and they could be inspired to be passionate as well, and to also dive into these ideas and care just as much as you do. So it's really important to also make your activism relevant. There are a ton of things that you could do activism on that are within the realm of classical liberalism and libertarianism, but some of these things might not be as relevant during the semester or during this year as they could be other times. So if you make it relevant, it's a lot easier to get people to stop by and to want to engage with you. Because if it's something that's going on locally or at your school and your community, people will probably already be thinking about it. They'll already have a framework on how to engage with these ideas or how they want to talk about them, which will just make it so much easier for them to have a conversation with you when they're stopping by. A great way to make things relevant is to look at current legislation. Just keep in mind SFL's 501c3 status. So you can't really push a specific policy or legislation that's going through, but you could talk about the bigger ideas that's going on with whatever you're trying to spread on campus or in your area. Controversies can also be a really good way to get people to stop and engage with you. It just depends on how comfortable you are with being controversial on your campus when you're doing activism. But it will definitely have people stop by, especially with controversies. People probably already have a very strong opinion on it, so they'll be more likely to want to stop by and get into a discussion with you. So just make sure that it's something that people care about or something that is current and relevant on campus to help people be interested in what you're doing. So this is a picture I included on something that I did a year ago that was really relevant to my area. So I'm from Florida, and in Florida last year, they were trying to pass medical marijuana. So we teamed up with a couple other clubs, and so, since we weren't really focusing on the specific, like pushing the amendment, we were doing more of the education side, but all of our tables were next to each other. So we were able to do, like, one of us was doing like more of the education, someone was doing more like very specific like marijuana law and different policies in Florida, and then SSDP was registering people to vote to get them to vote yes on this amendment. But it was a great way to get people to stop by. People were really engaged with this idea because it had been going around this whole semester. People were all over campus, not just our clubs, trying to get this amendment passed, and people already had really strong opinions about it, especially on the college campus. So I think this was probably one of the most successful events I've ever participated in, just because how many people cared about it already, or how many people were already thinking about it when they would stop by the table. So also going off of this, it can be really important to step out of your comfort zone. And I know a lot of times we'll get into our little libertarian bubbles where we just hang out with other people who already have the same opinions on most things. But you can really be limiting yourself when it's coming to activism, especially if you're trying to reach out more to the community and local area. So it can be really helpful to reach out to groups that you haven't worked with before. So the easier ones are probably the single issue groups. Like I said, the picture before, we worked with Students for Sensible Drug Policy and Normal, which are both drug reform groups. And a lot of us are members in both. And I know in SFL in general, a lot of people cross over with these drug policy groups. But something that I think can be outside of people's comfort zone is reaching out to different political ideologies. So the other group we worked with was Students for a Democratic Society, which is the radical leftist group on campus. And we had done some work with them before, so we kind of had this framework. But I've talked to other leaders, and I know it can be kind of uncomfortable when you have very opposite political views. But they do have a lot in common with us when it comes to things like the drug war and other social issues. So it can be really helpful if you step outside of this comfort zone, outside of your little libertarian bubble, and talk to these ideas, or talk to these people who have these very radical ideas that are different from yours, and you might be able to have some common ground and do some really, really great activism, especially because they have a different perspective. And it's also really important to be very honest when you're working with these groups. A lot of times, we have these preconceived notions of people who are opposite from us politically. So if you're just very friendly, and I think if you're completely honest about what you're going to do, it makes it a lot easier to work with. I know just being comfortable, especially when you have these very different ideologies, just being like when we were doing the drug war protests, we obviously didn't push, that socialism is wrong and the free market is the only way. That wasn't our goal. Our goal was just to talk about ending the drug war and doing reforms in that side, which made it really easy to work together. I think another area that a lot of students might not think about would be inviting different cultural clubs. So depending on what activism you're working on, different cultural groups can be willing to work with you and very helpful, even though they might not be strictly political. So we did an example that I did last semester was an open borders lecture. We had a professor come from a different university and talk about open borders. And I reached out to a bunch of political groups, and actually the European Union Student Association was one of the co-sponsors because they were very interested in the idea of open borders and in relation to the EU. So that was something that we've never worked with a cultural club before, and it was kind of just a shot in the dark when I sent a bunch of emails to these leaders, but it ended up being very helpful, and we had a really good turnout. Another place you can look is your local community. So a lot of times student activists are only on campus for 2 to 4 years, and it's just a very transient period. So if you can find a group that's based in your community or based in your town that has long established members or long established people that are just in the community, it can be really helpful to having a very successful event or just engaging with local issues. So you can do a lot of stuff that's off campus. So they'll have more of a knowledge on the history of different policies that have been going on in your local area or the different cultural aspects in your town. So this can be a great way to participate and engage with people who are residents in wherever your university is. And it definitely can be really surprising on what you can find. I know I've been to a couple protests that were just locally based and was able to meet a ton of people who weren't really engaged with campus, but it was really interesting to see how the politics were happening in my town outside of the university setting. So speaking of outside of my comfort zone, this is an example of something that we did that I was a little uncomfortable doing at first, but I decided to try it. We were invited to participate in a protest that Students for a Democratic Society hosted, which was to demilitarize the police. So our university police was getting surplus military goods from the government, and we were protesting to get them to opt out of this program. So it was very 70s style protests. I have a megaphone in my hand. We marched and shut the streets down, which was definitely very outside of my comfort zone of being more book related and handing out books. But it ended up being great. We had leaders meet with the head of police on campus, and they actually signed a letter and agreed to not order anything else from the program, and all they requested was to keep one vehicle that they already ordered. It ended up being very successful, very outside of the comfort zone of me and my club, but ended up being a lot of fun and being very successful. A really important thing when you're doing activism is to make sure that you are giving other people ownership. I know that it can be really tempting when you're really passionate about something and you've come up with this great idea that you just want to try out on campus, to want to do everything, and you just want to manage all of it to make sure it goes perfectly. But being a full-time student and having a lot of other responsibilities, this can definitely be really overwhelming. So it's really important to delegate to other people in your club. It'll help things run smoothly. It'll help you stay less stressed. It'll help everyone be less stressed and to have a very successful event. It's also a great way to highlight the talents and interests of other people in your club. So if someone's really good at public speaking, you can have them be the front person if someone wants to come and debate you, or someone has very provocative questions. And if someone's really good at being really creative or is an artist, you could have them help design posters or design a banner that you're going to use. So it's a great way to get people involved and to help other people in your club feel valued. And that's really important for leadership transition, because you're going to be getting ready to graduate. Other people are going to be coming into the club. So if they know that you value them and you value their work, they're going to be more likely to stay and more likely to get a leadership role and continue the club once you've graduated. we did that wasn't that we were also behind a philosophy of peace. So there's some of the creative members, they helped paint this, and it ended up looking really great. And a lot of cars can drive by and see it, so it's great advertising also. So the social aspect is also something that really helps keep your community together. It definitely should be very important to you to have a strong social network. It's a lot of, like, there are some people that are going to join your club that are just going to be so passionate about the ideas that they're going to come no matter what, just because they care so much about libertarianism, classical liberalism, or whatever your club is in support of. But I think more often than not, when people come, they're kind of hesitant to join this group and just to jump into something with people they don't know. This is a great way to get to know who's in your club and get to know what they're really interested in and how you can incorporate their interests into what you're going to be doing for the semester, for the year. And just getting to know people, it helps everyone. If you're friends or if you're at least acquaintances, it makes it so much easier to work together. If there's like an emergency or something and you're making posters really late at night and there's like a hot glue gun accident or incident, you can call one of your members up and say, hey, I really need help for our activism event tomorrow, and they're more likely to come and help you if you've already built these social networks and you're already really close and you can be friendly with one another. I think this is also really important when it comes to building coalitions and working with other groups. So what we've done at my university, the other clubs that we work with, we will do like co-host parties together. So we'll have, our 3 clubs will have like a big party or a big social that we'll all host together. So all our members will come together and we'll just all hang out, get to know each other. And it makes doing activism a lot easier, especially when we have such different views on other things. We leave the politics at the door for the most part, and can just hang out as college students who care about current events and issues in the community. And it makes friendships that help with anything on campus that you're trying to do later in the future. If you can just, you see someone on campus as an activist and, you can stop and get coffee, stop and say hi. You've built these relationships that are going to last, that aren't just, hey, we're going to do this one activism event and that's it. It builds these long-lasting things that can pass on throughout the year and throughout your time in college that can really make having an activist community in your area really strong. And the last thing I want to mention is just make sure your activism is fun and creative. Usually when we're doing activism, it's always about something that can be very serious, whether that's the drug war, immigration, or guns rights activism. Usually the implications of whatever policy or whatever ideas we're talking about are very serious things. But if you can make your activism something that's fun and something that people can engage with, that isn't too serious or too much of like a downer, then people are going to be more likely to stop by, more likely to engage and want to listen to what you have to say. An example of this, one of my campus coordinators recently did an immigration activism event on campus, and she taped off an area in the grassy area of her campus, and inside was a country that she called Donut Land because they had free donuts inside. But in order to get into the country, you had to fill out this very long visa application that was very confusing and didn't make sense for the most part. So it was just something they were doing to engage people and show how difficult it can be to get a visa and to immigrate into the United States. So it was something that was really fun. People got a donut at the end, and it was a creative way to talk about this very serious idea. So just keep in mind that you can still have fun when you're doing something serious and still enjoy all the activism that you're doing. So that's all I have, but if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. My email is listed on the PowerPoint, and thank you for listening.